Got your diesel running. Head out on the highway, missing all the roadkill. Another Truckie Tuesday. Indicate when you're changing from lanes. Do not brake check me in my prime. Australia moves and it's thanks to you guys. Trucks to get there on time. Listen to the air horns. Dip your lights from high beam. HPL that help you. Thanks to rock and a food. On the highway driving all day, and at night when the traffic's slow. Getting goods from state across lines. We're ready to go. Without trucks, Australia stops. They're driving around the clock. Never giving up. Drive safe tonight. Drive left-hand side.
Time for Truckie Tuesday with the road warrior, Rocket Rod Hannafy, who is in a town that is so good they named it twice. Wagga
That's a fact.
Wagga Wagga. Indigenous word for place of many crows, place of many crows.
Yes.
Truckie Tuesday is proudly brought to you by ICEPACK, toughest there is. The original Aussie sleeper cab aircon, keeping truckies on the road cool and comfortable for 30 years. Now, here's something I love, and ICEPACK insisted on it. If you're a Brizzy-based truckie, for a limited time, mention the code LUKE10, 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 and not only will you score their truck show special, 10% off any new install. But ICEPACK will throw in a free auto start kit valued at $680, one per customer. That's real value from a brand that gives a damn about the drivers keeping this country running. So don't sweat it out on the highway. Trust the one truckies swear by. ICEPACK, the toughest there is.
Yes.
Wagga Wagga.
So they used to have a festival here called the Stoned Crows Festival.
That's right.
And it was where a lot of caravanners and motorhomers all came together, and I attended for a few years and did seminars and talks, and it went down very well. I was very much welcomed. The gentleman here was involved in what used to be Rig Radio many years ago. It was a truckies radio show on the Community Radio Network, and came out of Wagga every morning for a few years.
There was another truckie show that we used to run in Bathurst overnight. It was a taped show, and it was called Big Rig Radio.
Ah.
And then when I was at 2LF, we had the Nev Nichols Road Show.
Yes. I've spoken to Nev. It's been a long time now, of course, and he was one of the few that did trucking albums at the time.
Yeah, the Nev Nichols Road Show. I'll never forget it. So there you go. Rod, there's a bit to talk about today, so we'll jump straight into it. And before we get into some of the trucking news that we need to cover, got a message from Mick. He says, I listen to Spotify when I'm driving my bus around the Lower Hunter. I've been listening for years. I wanted to comment on the best driving advice I've ever got. My grandfather was a professional driver, and the one I looked up to, he wanted to take after him. The best advice he gave me was, when you're driving, you're not driving for yourself. You're driving for the 5 cars in front and the 5 cars behind. The other advice he gave me was, give way to the right and watch the idiot on the left. Cheers, Luke. Love that you found a way to continue. That's a nice message from Mick, and good advice.
Certainly is, and does go along with our defensive driving, looking around you and being aware of your situation.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Defensive driving, we discussed that in the previous podcast. It's not looking at the car in front, it's looking 5 or 6 ahead and trying to predict what's going to happen. And great that he wanted to take after his grandfather.
Yes, it's good to see that you've got a good role model. Not everybody does. It's one of the things, of course, with having to have your driving hours. If you've got family and they've got cars and you've got plenty of friends, that's good. But if you live in a smaller community, it's pretty hard to get those hours up, and particularly if your family doesn't have a time to help you out. And it's just one of the things where I do think that it's definitely worthwhile having those hours as part of the requirement. But I suppose it just makes it harder for some and easier for others. And that's where there has been discussion of whether you have a driving school lesson that you get a little bit more credit for it, rather than just an hour with mum and dad, that maybe a professional lesson should be worth more if you're prepared to pay for it, and or you can't get that done through family.
But it does raise the question I asked, and that is, we fully endorse taxpayer-funded swimming lessons. Should there be tax-funded or subsidised defensive driving lessons for all L-platers?
I honestly believe it's worth the effort to include it. I think we would make a change in people's attitudes. It's simply education in a way. As we've discussed, you get taught by watching mum and dad, and if they're aggressive or, whatever the case may be, or they teach you bad habits, then you're going to carry them forward. If someone gives you good advice and explains that it's not just about you, like old mate said, that it is about everybody else, and being situationally aware and making a decision to actively drive safely rather than simply get in and I'm going to be there and that's the end of it. I think over time, mate, we'd save lives, and I think it would be a worthwhile investment.
Yeah, it's worth a debate, isn't it? Let us know what you think. Luke Boda, radioguy@gmail.com, and leave us a voice message. And if you'd like to be included in any of our topics, leave your contact details and the Millennial will get in touch with you, because we'd love to talk. Now, we got this voice message from Jim.
Hey, Lukey, mate, about the best advice you've ever received as far as driving goes. My ex-wife, of all people, pointed out to me once, approaching a high-speed intersection, such as a T intersection, for instance, if you're turning left, a lot of people only look to the right to see if there's anything coming, and I almost got wiped out because I was one of those people. And, she suggested to me that maybe I should look to the left as well in case there's something overtaking. And, this one time I looked left as well into a 100K zone and, saw that there was one semi overtaking a B double, and that would have wiped me out a month earlier.
Yeah. I got hit by a car when I was 6 turning 7 and on the Wakehurst Parkway, and pretty seriously too. I was in hospital for a while, and I looked right, I looked left, but I didn't look right again. And bang, I was knocked over. And you only do that once, Rod.
Yes, well, that's it. Kids don't sort of think of those things when they're that age. You're not motivationally aware sort of thing, I suppose. And we know about kids running out into traffic and things like that, and it's a terrible thing when it happens. And sometimes there is what is simply an accident that somebody, you can't control everything around you, but you can do your best to try and anticipate. It's not simply the speed, it's speed for the conditions. So if you're doing 40 kilometres an hour round a corner that's a slippery road and it's a blind corner and you lose control, the speed was too high for the conditions, even though it might be a 60K zone. So it is the responsibility of the driver not just to follow the rules, but, mate, if we could include common sense in that defensive driving, I think we'd save 100 lives every year.
Let's keep going. We got this voice message from Tony. I'm keen to have a listen.
G'day, Luke. Tony from Inglewood. I've got a couple of things. One with Rod. Is there anything that the Federals can do to legislate that the NHBR has the rights, the sole rights, say, to look at truck issues apart from whether you're breaking the actual road law? So logbooks, all that sort of stuff. Get state police out of it because they're just looking to make money.
He's not alone, and it's not just about state police. In WA, the police do not act against truck drivers on anything other than road rules. So you go through a stop sign, they pull you up. You speed, they pull you up. They do not look at your logbook, because in WA you don't have to have one. They work under OH&S. People think that's a fairer system. I've got to say that there are certainly those who believe that some of the state police are revenue raising as opposed to improving road safety. And not all of them fully understand our rules or regulations, and they find something that they can pick you up on that has nothing to do with road safety, and you get a ticket out of it, and they know that it's very hard to fight. NHVR are building. I have spoken to Paul Salvati. He's the 2IC, and at this stage we're hoping to have him on the podcast possibly next week or the week after. A couple of things to discuss with him. They have a new CEO, and we're waiting to see sort of what that future will come under that new CEO. She's a lady that's come from New Zealand. So perhaps in a few months we'll get a direction from them on where they're going and might get to talk to the CEO. But if NHVR control the rules, and they are the people that police them, they don't make the rules. They are given the rules specifically by the NTC, the National Transport Commission. So we can't argue that they should fix everything, although that would be nice. But again, there is talk that they should include licensing, that they should be responsible for that. They should have input into roads and conditions, and certainly into rest areas and things like that. They don't have the responsibility for it, yet they fine us if we don't comply. So the reasonable argument would be they should then have responsibility through the government to provide rest areas and make sure that those facilities are there. It's something we'd like to see, but whether we can wrest that responsibility from the states and give it to a federal body, mate, it's going to be a big fight, because they didn't like giving up the rules and the responsibility to NHVR at the start. To get it done, I think it would be better overall to have one responsible body. But, mate, I think it's going to be a hard fight. But if you think so, tell your poly as well, mate, because the more you tell, then the more likely we are to have them listen when it gets to a point we can act on it.
Rod, it was an eye-catching headline, and I'm dying to know your thoughts on all of this. Australia to phase out petrol and diesel after the first climate risk assessment report. According to the report, the Australian government's planning investments in low-carbon liquid fuel. What they want to do is cut emissions, and this decision was made after that climate risk assessment report held in Canberra last week. And there are concerns that this could mean eventually phasing out petrol and diesel entirely. The Albanese-led government has announced a $1.1 billion investment in low-carbon liquid fuels. Now, before I get your thoughts on this, Rod, I was speaking recently with James Ward, our motoring expert from drive.com.au, and he had this to say. Listen carefully to what James Ward has had to say about the phasing out of petrol, and in particular on this occasion, diesel.
Diesel used to be less than petrol, but it still costs to do, and it's not so much the actual extraction and refining process, it's all the other bits and pieces, the logistics, because the more that it costs, you think, how do we get fuel in our cars? They get delivered to a petrol station in a diesel truck, and that truck needs to fill up. And so when the fuel prices go up, that truck that's delivering the petrol, it costs more to deliver the petrol, therefore the petrol costs more money, and then that truck, when it fills up, costs more. It's a cycle. The idea that we will move away from some of these fossil fuels, I know that we are working towards that, but let's be really clear. This government and all those people that sit in Canberra, none of them are responsible for this. This is something that's going to happen over decades of time. And they're a 4-year government, right? Like they're in and out. So yeah, I love how they all say, we're going to do this and we're going to try this. What is the solution to the alternative is always the question to ask. And we are naturally moving towards more efficient technology, because that's what, if you go buy a new car today to replace a 5 or a 10-year-old car, regardless of what it is, that new car will be more efficient and less polluting, because we have evolved. We're getting better at this. The government didn't do that. The car manufacturers did, and you did by buying it. So it's the credit where credit's due. But yeah, repowering a truck fleet, hydrogen is a technical solution, but it's not a viable implementation solution yet, because hydrogen itself costs so much money. And to repower those cars, it does cost money, but it's not like building a whole new fleet of, things that run on unicorn tears and great intentions.
What do you make of this thought bubble that perhaps down the track we will be phasing out petrol and diesel from a trucking point of view? Is that possible?
Not at the moment. My understanding is that rail is, if not the biggest, one of the top 3 users of diesel, because most of the rail locomotives are diesel electric. So, to say that they're going to phase it out, yes, if you've got trains running in the city, and we can see them running on electricity in certain places, but as he said, anything outside of that, the rail for mining is the amount of diesel they use in running everything on the mine sites. That's phenomenal. And the diesel that the industry, the trucking industry, supplies to the mining industry and the rail industry is just virtually without it, the whole of Australia would stop, mate. So it's something, as he said, to say in the future we aim to. It's not going to happen overnight. I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime. And whilst they're looking at hydrogen for trucks, I think it has more potential, certainly than electric trucks on long haul, on long distance interstate. Without diesel at the moment, we'd grind to a halt, mate. So it's going to be a few years yet. And there are still opportunities, like the diesel engines come a long way, and those that say that it's a dinosaur are right in some ways, but it's always improving. So we're going to be using diesel for many years yet.
James also mentions biodiesel there. What's that?
Biodiesel is using plant-based things. We actually had our own biodiesel plant. We used tallow initially, so tallow from animal carcasses was a byproduct of that. The trouble with the tallow, I'm sure that Luke, it's a bit like, dripping. When it gets very cold, it goes very thick, and it didn't work effectively. We changed over to canola oil, and there was a very big biodiesel industry in Australia for a little while, but the investment incentive wasn't there. There's very few people using it now in the scheme of things, because at the time you could save money in the cost, but then they changed the way that the taxation worked on biofuel. And, mate, I don't think there's very many using it now. So it's another option, but that takes investment to do it. And then the trucks do have to change a little bit. Like our standard trucks ran on biofuel, but we had so much trouble with it, mate. Virtually every truck in the fleet had a new engine in it because of the fact that it wasn't set up properly. And when they took away the incentive for the investment in it, it just virtually died overnight. There's probably still a couple using it, but it's a long way from being a replacement again at the moment.
Rod, a couple of years ago when you and I were broadcasting on the Triple M network, there was a national AdBlue shortage, and you can explain that in a second, but every truckie listening to us now knows what AdBlue is, but people who aren't truckies may have seen it for sale in those plastic canisters at the servo. But AdBlue was something that it was a fluid that you put in a diesel engine to try and reduce nitrogen oxide. Explain that.
Mate, when we're currently at Euro 5 in Australia, we're about to go to Euro 6 regulations for trucks in exhaust emissions. So when they first came in, probably about Euro 3, there were 2 options. There was EGR, exhaust gas recirculation, and what that virtually meant that as the exhaust came out of the engine, it was recirculated back through the engine again to clean it further. Now, virtually people said, well, you're putting shit in your engine. And that's what it was. You were putting the exhaust back through, and it created a hell of a lot of trouble on the road with trucks. The other was SCR, selective catalytic reduction. And that means you have an additional AdBlue tank. You don't put AdBlue into the diesel, but you have an additional tank which carries AdBlue. and that is put into the exhaust stream, and it reacts and reduces, as you say, the nitrous oxide. But it's another cost. So virtually you've got two different fuels. It does get mixed. It does add a cost to the running of the truck, but it does reduce emissions. And the Euro 6, many of the Euro 6s are using both of those technologies now, whereas EGR, when it first came in, was very costly. It created a hell of a lot of drama with engines and failures and high running costs, very high engine temperatures.
Volvo had put these Bosch AdBlue pumps on, not realised how many were going to like crap themselves once they got to Australia.
Yeah.
And I think they'd put like a diaphragm in the pumps backwards or something. And so we're having like entire fleets being stood down. And it didn't like make the news or anything, but it was getting to the point where places were starting to run, like mines, farms, truck yards and everything were running out of fuel because the fuel trucks couldn't be moving. And like on-road trucking is so monopolised in Australia that there's only one or two clients who transport fuel, and all of their trucks were down. And so like no one could get any fuel.
But they have refined it. As I said, they're still getting better. And with those two technologies now, they believe that in some places in America, mate, the trucks are actually putting out cleaner exhaust than the air they're taking in.
So it's a legal requirement to put AdBlue in your vehicle. If you don't put it... first question, does AdBlue affect performance?
No, it does not. But with all the electronics in the engines, if you run out of it, it'll eventually derate you and say, hey, you have got no AdBlue in this. I'm going to derate you and punish you until you get it back in and become compliant again.
Right. That was my next question. If you don't put AdBlue in and you try and reduce your overheads, the truck knows and you get reported, do you?
Yes, it does. Look, there's people who always find ways around systems, Luke. As I said, when EGR first came out, it created so much drama with engines. Some companies did disconnect it. A couple did get caught and get fined, and they got fined pretty seriously too. If you now take your truck into a dealership that is one of the engine manufacturers or a truck manufacturer, and they let it out when it's not compliant, they are liable for doing that as well. So whilst it added cost and people don't like that, other people say that, of course, as Australia, our contribution to climate change is probably one of the smallest in the world because of our population and our large country population compared to the size of the country we're in. Places like India and China that have got billions of people contribute a lot more. And some people say, why should we pay higher transport costs to take 0.1% off climate change? But everybody in the world's got to contribute. We've just got to find the best way to do it that doesn't increase those costs or then have engines self-destruct when they shouldn't.
So there you are. Every truckie listening knows all about AdBlue, but for our non-truckies, when you go into a servo and you see it in the big containers there, now you know what it is.
And we do get it from Bowsers as well, mate. Most of them have Bowsers for it now.
Okay. I see. I don't look for the Bowser AdBlue, but you can't help but see it for sale in a lot of service stations. How much is it? How much would you use in a year as far as money's concerned?
Mate, I run roughly a tank of AdBlue, which is about 120 litres, to my 2 tanks of diesel. It depends on where you buy. Now, you spoke of that shortage, Luke. There were people that were gouging pretty badly. Like some people were charging nearly $5 a litre at the time. So that's a big increase in cost. Generally now you buy it in servos for $1.99, $2 a litre. Occasionally you'll get it cheaper, but I saw it somewhere for $2.99 a litre. So, mate, people quibble about a little bit of difference in the cost of their fuel in the car, but $1 a litre difference. And I actually complained to the servo at the time. I said, mate, what's the go with this? Oh, that's a company policy. I said, well, that company policy is wrong, and I'm telling you right now that I'm going to tell people about it, and I would like a complaint lodged. I haven't been back there to check it yet, but people will cheat you where they can, Luke. And I've got to say, if anybody is paying more than $2 at the Bowser, because you buy those bottles, Luke, it works out about $5 a litre if you buy the bottle. But if you're paying any more than $2 at the Bowser, you're being ripped off and you should complain about it.
So from the trucking industry's point of view, and I don't know, you used to speak on behalf of the trucking industry, but as a spokesperson or a voice for the truckies, is Australia's chase for net zero, as far as transport's concerned, are we paying more for groceries and even the petrol and the diesel that we use at the servo is delivered by a truck using diesel and AdBlue? Are we paying more for our goods and the groceries on our shelves because of this chase for net zero?
It's very simply yes, because the technology has changed. As I say, we are going to mandate the use of Euro 6 trucks. Now, many of the manufacturers will say they are more fuel efficient, but that costs money to invest in it. It costs infrastructure, like to set up the AdBlue distribution network. It costs that because we are not only just running the truck on diesel, but we are using AdBlue in conjunction with that. So each of those is a cost. And yes, it wouldn't be a great amount, but it's all market driven. It's driven by those very big companies who see distribution as an added cost they don't want. So we want it delivered yesterday for nothing. And I only had a mate the other day say he's got a bloke that's got 5 trucks. He's working for a large national distribution transport company, and he's been told that he has to reduce his costs by 20% or they'll find somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Now, mate, they're dreaming because every single cost has gone up, not just wages, the cost of fuel has gone up, AdBlue's gone up, tyres have gone up. And for someone to be put in that position simply because a large multinational says, we want you to do it cheaper, I don't know how the hell you're supposed to do it, mate. A truckie deserves to be paid fairly. We live in a truck, we live on the road, and remind me about the Bruce Highway in a minute. We'll talk about that. But to be fair, we are pushed and pushed down by those that have the power to do so. And I don't think it's unreasonable that we should be paid fairly and that the industry should make a profit to be able to invest and do it properly and safely.
Okay, Rod,
Yep.
Let's cool off for a second and chat about the one thing that truckies complain about the most, getting a good night's sleep. I know you swear by ICEPACK.
Yes, they've been one of my supporters for many years, and I really think their product is terrific.
Let me tell the folks why. They were the first sleeper cab aircon on the market back in 1995.
Right.
They're Aussie-made, built tough, with a Kubota engine, and still the most trusted name out there. Doesn't matter if you're hauling local or interstate. ICEPACK keeps you sharp, safe, and really importantly, well-rested.
And mate, the most important thing about ice packs is they give you a set temperature the whole night.
They've thought of everything. Auto start to protect your battery, wireless remote you can use from 100 metres away, and on the ES model, a heater option for those frosty nights. And right now, if you're getting your install done in Brisbane, mention the code LUKE10, 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 and you'll still get their truck show special. 10% off any new install, plus a free auto start kit valued at $680. Limited time, and there's one per customer. Head to their website, icepack.com.au, to check out their models, their parts, and service agents right across Australia. That's why truckies trust ICEPACK, the toughest there is. We'll get on to the Bruce Highway in a second, but just one last thing on AdBlue. Can you remind us all why there was a national shortage which led to the gouging?
AdBlue is simply a mixture of urea. So if you've ever put urea into your garden, very highly nitrogen-based, and normally you buy it in a granular formulation. You throw it out on the lawn, and yet we made a lot of urea in Australia. Big company, is it ACI, I think it was, were making it in Australia, and it was made for the farming industry as well. But then, of course, AdBlue came along. It was a completely new product being produced. It then started using a lot of that urea, and ACI said, oh, well, we're not going to make it anymore. It's not profitable. They were claiming, I think, the biggest cost was the rise in the cost of natural gas, which they use in the process to produce it. And they were going to say that we're going to cease production, end of story, you've got to get it elsewhere. They went to go and try and buy it overseas, but everybody else was using it for agriculture. And because of that shortage of production in Australia, all of a sudden we were struggling to buy the stuff around the world and get it here because, as you say, it's mandated for use in trucks to be compliant and reduce emissions. So they struggled eventually. We bought it from here and there. I must admit, Luke, I don't know whether we still make it in Australia, and that's something we should follow up on.
Yeah, we absolutely should. Thank you. That really interesting stuff. AdBlue, nitrogen oxide with water. And it's a blue liquid, obviously. They weren't very creative when they named it.
Well, it's clear. It's not blue at all.
I've seen it blue.
Oh, right.
Or maybe
some that tinted.
Maybe I've just seen it in a blue container.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, there you are. If you've got any questions, if you've got any answers, Luke Boda, radioguy@gmail.com. Now, the Bruce Highway.
So we know of the large amount of money that's been put up. We know that there is a Bruce Highway Steering Committee that was formed before the money was announced, and there are 10 people on that committee. I know one of the gentlemen on there. He's a bloke by the name of Ken Wilson. He runs a website called Truck Friendly. He provides education for caravanners about sharing the road with trucks. He's one of the 10 on the committee. He rang me and said that he was being asked to contribute about fatigue on the Bruce. And also, I've got to say that the consultants that they have engaged to look at specifically fatigue and rest areas on the Bruce Highway reached out to the National Road Freighters Association. With my involvement in rest areas, they sent that to me. I put in a submission, and I followed up and rang the bloke up and said, look, I've put this submission in. Did you get it? What are your thoughts? So they've been out and done a road trip up and down the Bruce. They spoke to quite a number of truck drivers, but they also, at the very end, I spoke to the gentleman, mate. I spent probably an hour on the phone with him. My submission was probably about 2 or 3 pages. It also included rest area design and comments on what's currently there and the fact that I had suggested they do an audit first. Now, if you just drive up and down the Bruce Highway and you look at the signed rest areas, whether it's for cars or trucks, our view is there's not enough. Of course, the number of trucks, the number of cars, the number of caravans has increased over the years. They have not kept pace with that, and they certainly didn't have enough many years ago, let alone to be for the volume of traffic that's there now. Fatigue is another factor in crashes on the Bruce. Yes, some are speed, some are simply falling asleep on boring and bad bits of road, and they looked at that overall. Now, they not only looked at signed rest areas, they looked at the green reflectors that are up and down the Bruce. There's not a lot, but there are some. And from my submission both to TMR and previously, they did include stockpile sites. Now, you know what a stockpile site is, Luke? You drive along the road.
Yeah.
And you know that every 3 years they come along and they resurface the road.
Right.
And on the side of the road, you will have a big pile of different sorts of gravel that they use when they resurface it. Now, they use that about 3 months every 3 years, and the rest of the time it sits there on the side of the road completely unused. Now, a lot of truckies know some of those sites. Some of us use them as stopping bays, as somewhere to sleep instead of beside another noisy truck. And to their credit, they've looked at those sites and they agree. If we tomorrow said, right, every stockpile site could be signed as a green reflector bay, and as long as it is suitable, might need a good entry exit, might need a tidy up, might need something, but we could double the number of rest areas, which would make places for truckies to manage their fatigue more available instead of driving into a truck bay and finding it full of caravans or other trucks. And then what do, Luke? You can't just park in the middle of the freeway and put the hazards on and go to bed. You've got to drive on to the next place. Sometimes people don't make it because they were tired. That's why they pulled into the bay in the first place. So they've done an audit.
Yeah.
They've been up and down. They've spoken to drivers. They're going to include those things. they will be putting a report in. And he said, look, we are a consultant. We don't make the decisions, but we can influence them. And at the very end of it, mate, having spoken to me and other drivers, he said, I have a far greater respect now for truck drivers and what they do, because there are simply not enough facilities there now. And he said, are we in a third world country? He said, I spoke to one driver and he said he was busting and he had to go out and have a shit in the grass on the side of the road because there was nowhere else to do it. And we've discussed that, and it's been a problem for a long time, and I hope that they really come up with something that includes us and helps us be safer.
Yeah, interesting stuff. A little bit more trucking news thanks to Big Rig, and this is a really concerning story, Rod. It's the story of a teenager that's been arrested after throwing an object at a truck. This is in Katherine. A 16-year-old boy has been arrested for allegedly throwing an unknown object at a truck while it was driving over the Katherine Bridge in the Northern Territory. The truck sustained minor damage as a result of the incident, which happened last Thursday around 1:45 a.m. Further Northern Territory police investigations have revealed the alleged offender had been involved in the theft of a push bike at a shopping centre on Katherine Terrace shortly after the truck was hit. Members from Strike Force Cerebus arrested a 16-year-old who remains in police custody at the dropping of this podcast. Charges are expected to follow. There was a real problem years ago about dickheads throwing bricks and rocks off overpasses onto cars and trucks. I know a lot of these overpasses now have safety wire, and it makes it very, very difficult. But is this an ongoing problem?
Mate, there was another recent issue just a little while ago with young kids. I'd really like to ask him why. You know, why do you think it's fun to do something as stupid as that could risk a truckie's life? And I'm sure you've seen, is it the Mark Lee Bridge coming southbound out of Sydney? It was named for a driver who was killed because somebody threw a rock over, smashed the windscreen, and he died because of it. I just cannot understand a mentality, why you would think that's a fun thing to do. It happened in Boggabilla for quite a while, mate, many years ago. That seems to have calmed down, thank goodness. And it's one thing to throw it and think, oh, geez, you know, we'll see what happens here. But what if it comes through the window and hits the driver in the head and then he comes across the road and runs over you? Like, I wish they'd think that much further ahead. So absolute stupidity, and I'd like to ask the kid why he thought it was a good idea.
And just another example of the juvenile crime that's sweeping across the country. Unbelievable. I'm with you. Why? Why did you think that was a good idea? And look, here's something. I don't know this popular Outback Roadhouse, but you would. The Burke and Wills Roadhouse, strategically located at the aptly named Four Ways between Cloncurry and Normanton, where the Wills Development and Burketown roads meet the Burke Development Road. It's the only fuel stop for 200 kilometres, and a lot of trucks stop there on their long journeys. For the past 6 years, it's been run by owners Ben and Sherry Stranger. Apparently, it has great facilities at a top location with supplies, airports and fishing hotspots, all within a 2-hour drive. Every year, one of the questions that drivers get asked is, what is your favourite roadhouse? Burke and Wills is often the reply. Kay Remfrey has worked at the roadhouse for almost 7 years and said an average of 35 trucks stop there daily. We get them from all over the place, and their favourite foods are our special hamburgers and fillet steak, she said. Anyway, it's up for sale, Rod.
And it's something that is becoming a problem, Luke. There was one called Little Tub out before you get to Broken Hill. Now, it was sort of one of those in the middle of nowhere. Unfortunately, it closed down and people just couldn't survive there anymore. That's been replaced by fast food. And, of course, on major highways, the servos now virtually only sell fast food. It's very hard to find a kitchen that will cook you a meal. It's talking to our mate on the Bruce, he said, I wonder how you blokes survive. He said, it's one thing to do a trip with your family and buy fast food from a servo, because that's all there is, but how you blokes survive on the road 6 days a week without the ability to buy a decent meal. And it's one of those things with those roadhouses, mate. I really hope they find someone that's prepared to get in and stay there, because those that we lose mean a big gap. Like you said, 200K either side. And we did at one stage have a little bit of success getting a roadhouse facilities improved at the Shell at Halfway Creek. There were some big holes there. And there's another example, is the Shell at Mount Isa. Now, years ago, Shell had a lot of truck stops. They closed the kitchens in every single one in Australia. Some of them have had people go back in them. But the Shell at Mount Isa, mate, another one, another critical place, has nothing there for us. And if it doesn't in those places, how do you restock? We can't just drive our B double or triple road train into the supermarket there. So, mate, I wish them well. I'm glad they've been there. I hope that they enjoy their retirement, but I hope that we find someone who'll take it over and continue that service, because for us, it's life and death in a way. That might be overstating it, Luke, but, geez, it's getting harder and harder to live and survive on the highway, and we really need those facilities out there.
You know, I think it really relies on two major factors. One, is it a money-making concern? Is it running at a profit? Is it worth it?
Yep.
And you're going to find people who are willing to live there.
Yes, particularly those remote ones. Little Topar was probably one of those. It was in the middle of nowhere, so getting staff was hard. And if you didn't want to live there yourself, no one's going to drive 2 hours to work each morning and home each night. But, of course, we need those facilities. You couldn't say Mount Isa is remote and difficult to get places, and many of those sites that were closed were profitable. It was a corporate thing. But, of course, the other thing to remember, Luke, is all of that stuff, no matter whether you're a major fuel retailer or the people running that site, it all comes there by truck. Without trucks, you don't have anything to sell. So if you can't recognise the people that are delivering everything you sell might need a meal, geez, mate, we're looking down a dark future. I've got to say that.
Do you know, and if not, someone listening will know, out of every litre of diesel or petrol that's sold, how much goes to the retailer? What slice of the pie do they get?
Of course, they will say it's a very small slice. The government takes the vast majority in excise.
Fuel excise, yeah.
That's why our fuels are high compared to some in the world, but not to others. We spoke recently of the Razorback blockade, and that was initiated because we were paying road tax. That was tax that was supposed to go back into the roads. It was replaced with fuel excise, and again, that money is supposed to go into the roads. Unfortunately, most of it goes into consolidated revenue, and that's why we can't get our roads fixed. So we don't mind paying for the roads. We're not the only users. Without them, we can't deliver products because we've got a very decentralised country, not like America where they've got billions of people and can afford better roads. But, mate, it's something where we understand and we believe we more than pay our way towards the cost of roads. We can't live without them in Australia. That rail network you spoke of, it still runs on diesel, and trucks have to supply the diesel to the rail. So it's an overall thing that, because of our decentralised nation, because of the fact that we have large communities separated by large distances, trucks do really carry Australia, but we're not looked after, we're not recognised, and that cost to retailers, as you say, they will say it's not enough. But then the government takes the biggest, and from our point of view, it doesn't go back into the roads, which is why we're supposed to pay it.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? I hope someone buys it. The Burke and Wills Roadhouse up for sale, folks. Make them an offer. What do they want for it, I wonder? We need to get them on the phone.
Mate, it'd be good to get someone who owns one, as you say, to answer that question. Is it profitable? What's the biggest issues? And I've got to say, you and I sat at Blackall one night and we had a discussion about Ampol, the Australian company. Mm-hmm. Most of their kitchens now have also been closed. They closed the kitchens. Now, it is about the cost of staff in making meals, having a short order chef. But again, everything they sell comes on trucks. We're not asking for a 5-course gourmet sit-down meal with waiters and a good wine list. We just need a decent meal to survive on the road, because I don't think living on fast food is good for your long-term health. And we need someone from either one of the fuel companies to come on and tell us why. They can answer your question on what money they earn. But someone from Burke and Wills or someone like that, somewhere remote, for them to call in and tell us their problems. And look, I know they have issues. There's certainly the issue of people stealing shower heads. Did you ever think that would be a problem, Luke?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, unbelievable. I couldn't believe it when you told me. I couldn't. Who goes into a truck stop shower and steals the shower heads?
Yes.
I couldn't.
What's wrong with people?
What is wrong with people? Well,
it's not us, mate, because we know there's not enough of them. But yeah, let's hope someone is happy to ring in and give us some of their side of the story.
but I would love to talk to the people selling it if we can find them. And if you've been to the Burke and Wills Roadhouse, tell us what's it like. Maybe we could try and find Kay Remfrey, who has worked there for maybe nearly 7 years. But I'd really love to talk to the owners, Ben and Sherry Stranger. So we'll try and get onto them as well for down the track.
And mate, next time at my favourite truck stop where I get excellent rissoles and salad and have a lovely meal, I'll ask him if he's prepared to do a chat with us as well, because he's one of those little independent ones.
God, Rod Hannafy and his rissoles with onion gravy, folks. He loves it. It's funny you should mention Ampol, because a lot of younger Australians may not realise this, but Ampol stands for Australian Motorist Petrol Company. And it was founded back in, can you believe this, Rod, pre-World War II, 1936.
Right.
And the government of the day wanted an Australian-owned fuel company. Of course, now the modern Ampol Limited comes after Caltex's rebranding. Ampol is a leading Australian transport energy provider with a branded petrol and convenience network. There you are. It was the Australian Motorists Petrol Company, which was also where AMP comes from.
Right, okay. I wasn't aware of the naming. I knew it was Australian many years ago, and as you say, they paid a franchise fee to Caltex, or Techron in America, and they traded under the Caltex brand here for many years. Why, I don't know. They've now reverted to Ampol, so people will go around and say, oh, Ampol, geez, I wonder where they came from. Well, now you've just explained where they went. They just sort of went into hiding as Caltex, and now they're back as Ampol. But they have a bit to answer for in closing our kitchens, Luke.
All right. If you've ever worked at a truck roadhouse, what's it like? Are the profits there? And I want to know how much of the pie out of a litre of petrol or diesel goes to the retailer. Let us know. Luke Boner, radio guy at gmail.com. Look, this is interesting. You know, the Pyrmont fish markets are currently under construction. Have you seen this new thing they're building there? It's unbelievable.
No, I haven't seen that one.
Well, next time you're down at Pyrmont in Sydney, have a look. But the Pyrmont, the Pyrmont fish markets, and also Sydney's motorsport precinct could be turned into overnight rest areas for truckies. It's a bid to find fixes for the city's long-running truck parking issues. You see, you've got an $80 million dedicated truck parking area in Eastern Creek. That's stuck in the early planning stages. But, so Blacktown Council, in a response to a spike in complaints from ratepayers about trucks parking in suburban streets, they're currently in talks with the Sydney Motorsport Park and the Sydney Dragway, and there's a proposal, Rod, to allow hundreds of trucks to park in the unused areas of the raceway at night.
Now, that's something we've been trying to arrange for years. Technically, by law, if you are in a residential area, and it depends on what state you're in. One calls it an area with street lighting. The other is curbing and channeling. You can't park a truck for more than an hour. There is a get out of jail clause. I think it's Rule 200 or something that says that if you are operating under a fatigue rule, you're allowed to stay there because, you know, we've got to have a 7-hour break legally every day, a continuous 7-hour break under our logbook rules. But yes, we've had trouble that there aren't enough sites for interstate truckies. So you go to the major sites and there is a BP at Eastern Creek, mate. Normally you can't swing a cat in there. There's all people parked up because they've come from Melbourne or Brisbane overnight. But the change has been people that buy a truck and they go and work it during the day. and they don't have a yard or a facility to park it, so they'll go and park it in the truck stop overnight, or they'll park it up and down Sydney streets. And it's not just Sydney. Sydney's been the worst. And if you turn up and you can't park, what do? We've still got to manage our fatigue. We've got to comply with the law. But where in the past there was more, I suppose, structured things where you'd have Fred would have his trucks and he'd have a yard and he'd park them all in the yard at night and they'd go to work the next day. There seems to be a lot more individuals and people that won't buy a facility to park their truck, so they just dump them in residential areas overnight. It's good to see that Blacktown's doing it. It was one of the councils that used to be really officious in fining us. If you pulled up overnight to unload in the morning, the coppers would come out and knock you off. So, mate, it's an excellent idea. We'd certainly love to see that bloody rest area started and built rather than still being talked about. The land's there, the money's there, we want it done. But it's a terrific idea, mate, and I hope that it comes to fruition and provides a template for other councils and cities to do something as well.
All right, we've covered a fair bit in Truckie Tuesday today. My question for our listeners is the best roadhouse that's still operating in Australia. Doesn't matter where it is, WA, Northern Territory, South Australia, even Tassie. I want to know the best roadhouse in Australia. I want to know why. Do you know what's on the menu? And what hours are they open? I'd really like to hear. And the Burke and Wills Roadhouse will try and get onto the current owners. And I'd like to take a peek behind the scenes. What's it like running a roadhouse? Is there any money in it? I wonder if these people have made a decent living, have got a little nest egg now and they're retiring, or are they getting out because business is bad, Rod?
I'm sure it's dropped off, Luke, compared to what it was. And it depends on where you are and what your traffic levels are, whether you get those. So I suppose the other part to that, Luke, is if there's somebody out there that wants to nominate the best one, we certainly want to hear that. You've asked why. Is it the staff? Sometimes it's simply that they treat you like family and they look after you and you get a good home-cooked meal as opposed to fast food. But my extended question is, how much has the closure of those facilities affected your life as a driver? Has it meant it's harder for you to stay fit? Is it harder to get good food? You know, what's the one thing that where those people operating a business, as you say, they've got to be profitable. They do it to make a profit. But with the closure and the changes in those roadhouses, how has it affected you personally as a truck driver?
Yeah, and why did people steal shower heads from their showers? that is
absolutely unanswerable questions.
That has absolutely got me buggered. And why would a 16-year-old want to throw an object from a bridge onto a truck? Unbelievable. If you've got some opinions, please share them. And we love the voice messages so we can hear your voice. If you'd like to be part of the production of Bonafide with Truckie Tuesday, leave your details on your email and we will get back in touch with you. Luke Boner Radio Guy at gmail.com. Our Facebook is Luke Boner That Radio Guy. It's the Bonafide podcast available everywhere. And Rocket Rod Hannafy, safe trip from Wagga. Where are you heading?
Oh, heading home, mate. I just haven't made it home yet. My EWD is going to be very cranky with me if I don't get home by 4 o'clock. And at this stage, I should be there by about 1:32 and heading off to Brisbane on Monday at this stage.
All right. The Truckie Tuesday segment would not be possible without our sponsor, ICEPACK, the original Aussie sleeper cab air con. Trusted for over 30 years and the toughest there is. For a limited time in Brisbane, you'll get 10% off a new install plus free auto start kit. It's worth $680, but only when you use the code LUKE10, LUKE10, Luke10. And there's one per customer. Hit up icepack.com.au and check the link in the description. Good to hear your voice, mate. You drive carefully.
Sign off from Truckie Tuesday. Safe travelling to all.
10-4, good buddy. So, thank you once again for bearing with us on this episode 55 of Bonafide with me and the...
Luke, we've got to give away a Toots book.
We have. This is the book about Australia's most famous female trucker.
It is. So, if you want a copy of the Toots book, perhaps leave us a voicemail.
What's your favourite roadhouse? Where is it? What's on the menu? What hours do they operate? But we want a description. We want you to sell it. Can you believe people steal shower nozzles from these places?
Yeah. If you have a crazy story at a roadhouse.
Yeah, what's your crazy story? Patrick Swayze, have you seen that movie?
No.
It's fantastic. The Bonafide podcast where we don't tell you what to think. We just give you something to think about.
Well, Luke, I actually have a thought of the day that was submitted to
Yeah?
us by Steve, Nathan's dad. Are you ready for this?
Okay, this is Steve, Kelsey's future father-in-law.
Yes.
This is his thought for the day.
He said, be good to your children. They're the ones that will pick your nursing home.
No nursing home.
And I could not agree more, Steve. I think that is a very, very wise thought of the day.
He and his lovely wife, your future mother-in-law,
Lisa.
are they still on holidays caravanning around the country?
Oh, you betcha.
When are they back?
At the end of the year sometime.
I can't wait to talk to him about his trip. Fix it up for me, Kelsey. I want to hear where they've been, the pros and cons of being a grow mate, the pros and cons of being a grey mo... Oh, please don't put this in the fucking jar.
Stupid glitches!
The pros and cons of being a grey nomad and dealing with traffic and our highways and the availability of roadhouses.
Yeah, that's a
Let's-
good question. Let's
do
do
it.
it.
I'm supposed to be going on a holiday sometime soon, and I think we may not be able to go because of work commitments.
Oh.
It's a bit tragic, actually, because we had to tell our luggage, and now I'm coping with all this emotional baggage.
Oh, my God.
Goodbye.
Couldn't help yourself, could you?